Good evening. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Gary.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Preston. Here. Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. Health. August is National Immunization Awareness Month, and the Fargo Cast Public Health stresses the importance of staying up to date on all routine immunizations. Vaccines stimulate an immune response to produce antibodies exactly as they would if a person is exposed to the disease. After the vaccination, people develop a level of immunity that disease without having to get the disease first. The vaccines available in the United States are tested to ensure they are safe and effective and are continuously monitored after they are in use. Fargo Cast Public Health will hold a walk-in immunization clinic for K-12 students August 12th at its main building on 13th Avenue South. Library. The 2021 Northern Focus photographic exhibit is on display at the downtown Main Library. The library will also have a booth at the Pride of the Park event on August 14th at Island Park. The Tales and Tales Summer Reading Challenges at the library continues through August 21st. Police. A professional accountability unit mid-year report from the police department was released August 5th, includes information regarding use of force, incident reviews, and personnel complaints from January 1st through June 30th. This report is available on the police department's website and social media platforms. The Fargo Police Department Academy graduated 14 students on August 6th. The police department is proud of the commitment and determination of the students and the staff who made the academy possible. The police department has extended 13 conditional offers of employees to the graduate and looks forward to them joining them on September 7th upon successful completion of conditional requirements. Almost looks like you had an academy so we could recruit, huh? That works good. The Department of Communications and Government Affairs partnered with the Fargo Police to go behind scenes to showcase the 12-week training course and introduce you to the Fargo's PD's newest employees.
On August 5th, 2021, the Fargo Police Department graduated its second ever police academy. It's exciting to always have that first class. I mean, I can even remember back to my first academy class that I graduated in Milwaukee when I was the academy director there, and how excited all those folks were. And that's how we want them to feel every day when they come to work, because it's a pretty important thing to put that badge on and go to work every day, and especially to represent the City of Fargo Police Department and the City of Fargo.
The creation of this academy is something that we've talked about for years, and it's something that we've always wanted to do. We are always in a state of hiring and recruiting. As with any large law enforcement agency, we're looking for good people. We're always looking for good people. Well, now with the academy, we can put our efforts and our resources into one summer academy, run that for 12 weeks for 20 people, and start them off on the right foot.
An advantage that the Fargo Police Department has over other academies is that our instructors are made up of current police officers. So we're bringing in detectives that are working current cases. We're bringing in officers that are working on patrol, and they're able to bring in real-life experience of things that they're currently doing or currently working on.
Our highest priority when we come into work every day is just creating good police officers, or the best police officers we can. We look at each one of these students as a potential partner on the street. And so we just want to make sure that they're confident, they're knowledgeable, and they can go out and do the job and do what they need for the citizens of Fargo.
My dad was a cop for many years, and I've always looked up to it. I felt this calling for community service and protection.
I've always been drawn towards helping communities as much as I can, and I feel like I'm able to do it, so I feel drawn to do it.
I can't think of anything else in the world you could do day to day where you're going to go out and just try to find a solution to just one thing after another, try to make somebody's life a little better that way. Something that really resonated with me and something I hope to make a career out of.
It's a lot of classroom work, just learning all the different elements of becoming a police officer, what you can and can't do.
I really like the constitutional law. I think that's a lot of fun. Also learning some of the defensive tactics that police get to use, that's a lot of fun as well.
Most interesting to myself has been learning how to handcuff someone. You're restricting someone's movement, but in order to keep their dignity as a human being and respectful, just knowing how to put them on correctly is super important. So you're not pinching them, you're not hurting them.
I think what I have most fun with is actually like the traffic stop kind of stuff. The instructor be kind of evaluating us. They'd give us a scenario, tell us this person is being pulled over for such and such violation, and then we basically make our call-outs over the radio, you know, walk up to the car, kind of have a conversation with the person. Just doing the scenarios and getting kind of the feel for what I'm gonna see on the street has made me feel a lot better about getting out there and actually like applying what I've learned.
The weapons instructors here are highly qualified. They're really good about taking somebody that's new with a firearm and teaching them the ropes and getting you qualified. The EVOC, which was our driving course, that was really fun, getting to whip the vehicles around a little bit.
Just kind of testing the abilities of the car and testing our abilities too as drivers. It's really cool to see how much work you can put into those cars and how they perform. So it was really fun.
Did not expect I was gonna have to get tased. Did not expect I was gonna have to get gassed.
And it's really important for us to get exposed to it because we might have to do it to someone. And you should know what you're inflicting on someone.
PT is kind of one of my favorite things, believe it or not. I've always been somebody who kind of likes to stay active, so I'm really enjoying it. Everybody's improving.
When it comes to like PT and strength and the physical part, not a lot of people was at that level, but now like everyone is doing like 30, 40 push-ups without getting tired. We are running, we are doing all the physical thing. It's fun.
Personally, I didn't realize kind of coming right into this academy just how much goes into it. A lot of things you're thinking just right from the get-go. What do I need to say on the radio? Where am I going to stop this car? How do I want to walk up to them? What's the first thing I'm going to say? Thankfully, we were able to get out here, get in squads, have some role players going and just kind of start working through all that.
I mean, all this is really preparing us to go out on the street and be ready to go. You know, if we see somebody who we think is driving impaired, I feel we would be able to conduct the tests that we need to move forward with whatever way we feel is right. And that goes for any of our training we've had, whether it's room clearing tactics, firearms, all that stuff. I feel confident in our class to be able to go forward and execute.
We got to go out on university here and try to guesstimate speeds and be able to verify it on LiDAR. That was pretty cool.
And that was a lot of fun because you'd see the car coming at you, you'd guess it's going 35, then you see the LiDAR says they're going 36.
Defensive tactics is a skill of not trying to hurt someone, but trying to counter and control their movements. Our main focus is making the person safe during it.
We will wrestle around with each other while the instructors watch, and then we can get times to go after the instructors as well. It's very fun.
You get this training and it's a confidence booster because you're like, okay, I know that I can clear this area without putting myself in too much harm.
Once you get the hang of it, and it's not necessarily getting a hang of the tactics, it's more getting used to working with everybody and kind of like know how to move together.
I think I'll be ready to go for the people of Fargo. I think they've really put that into us that we have the confidence, and if we have a question, there's so many resources out for us.
It's really become like a family mentality. Like everyone helps each other out, and it's just like really good team building. Like if you see someone struggle, try and give them pointers, or if they see you struggle, kind of give their point of view and build off of that.
Our department is really positioning itself for future success. There's a lot of opportunities here for everyone, and I think both internally within the department and externally within our community that everyone's going to find a lot of rewarding opportunities as they continue down their law enforcement career. I'm just really excited for the future of the department in the city.
Good class. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda moving item 1 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda for an update? Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the June 26, 2021 regular meeting?
So
and the June 27th as well, the special meeting?
So move. Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 2 through 25 excluding item 1, which has been moved to the regular agenda?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Preston. Aye. Gehrig.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. We go to the regular comment, residents' comment. I have 4 people speaking tonight. I have Brandon Krager.
Commissioners, last meeting it was discussed how the public comments period should be addressed. What was said last week with one of the speakers was not okay or appropriate in any way, and me nor others condone the type of presence at public comments. Public comments is a place to address topics pertaining to the Fargo City Commission. Clearly, I have an agenda, but others do not. Does this platform benefit me? Absolutely. But does it benefit others as it does me? Probably not. It has been stated that this has been treated like an open mic night. Open mic night was when you had that abhorrent speaker every meeting, speaking without consequence. And since then, he hasn't been seen since. The few who continue to sign up and are here who are always here take the time out of their lives to come here to speak to you. We're not looking for a debate. We're looking to provide perspective. Just as you represent the voters of Fargo, we too represent those who cannot be here. This isn't as black and white as you see it, nor should it be talked down to. It has been stated that everything we say is the same thing. I hope that statement was taken as a fallacy because I can assure you I've been up here 8 times and none of them have been the same. All have been directed at commissioner meeting material to show input and perspective. Several times it has been stated that just contact us will put you on the agenda. Sometimes the agendas aren't ready until Monday, the day of the meeting. Also, what I'm a proponent of is listening, researching, and responding. That's why my speeches are delayed by a meeting. I take the time to understand, rewatch, and respond to what you guys propose. That's something that promotes respectful conversation and opinions. Take public comments as a wellness check or a doctor's appointment. Every 2 weeks, you get a hands-on examination of what is important to the voters, even if it's off key with the commissioner meeting minutes. It's not easy to come up here and speak, so maybe instead of scoffing towards us in annoyance, maybe realize that why we end up resorting to this public comment period. Whatever happens to this comment period won't reflect on us, the speakers. It will reflect on you, the commission. Thank you.
Brock Carlson.
To say that life has been bizarre since March of 2020 is a vast understatement. The government response in this country to a virus has led to unprecedented interference in our daily lives and suppression of our rights. Whether it is the evil of lockdowns, declaring certain people or activities non-essential, or forcing children into masks all day at school. Mass psychosis has infected our society as the media and a self-absorbed government bureaucrat seek to keep people in constant fear. The vaccines are finally here. We're told take the experimental vaccine and get your privileges back. Once government takes your rights, they come back as government privileges. Get the shot, no more masks, social distancing, any of it. Now, where are we on August 9th, 2021? The CDC says vaccines work great, yet admits they will not keep you from contracting the virus or that you are any less likely to spread the virus than someone who's not vaccinated. Now the mayor of New York City has declared that he will unilaterally impose a vaccine passport to all citizens and guests in his city. New York City, of course, is our biggest city and most important city, and where New York leads, others will follow. We are a free people. Such a policy is the antithesis of freedom. Free people do not produce papers to go to a store. Free people are not coerced into taking a medical treatment to keep their job. I'm asking you, City Commission, to declare vaccine passports, mandates, requirements, any type of coercion in this regard as illegal in our city. Say no to legalized segregation on the basis of what people do or do not choose to inject into their body. Now's the time before they come here to stop these insane and evil policies. Please stand for freedom and uphold the rights of your citizens. Thanks.
No applause in the straight. We don't do that. Christopher Cohn.
So this afternoon I attended the city's wildlife management program study group, and it was led by the police department. This is the program that involves deadly weapons and hunting in the Fargo Park system from September to January, when the public is in those parks and using the parks. At the public hearing on June 22nd, a bow hunter participant in the program suggested this study group, and the police then created the group and assigned him to the panel. The rest of the panel also has people who are pro-hunting interests, two from the North Dakota Fish and Game Department, two from the Fargo Park system. One is an avid sportsman. I don't know about the other. I don't know that the other one is pro-hunting. I'll take that one back. And when it came today to talk about the safety issue, which was the main issue that the police wanted to talk about when they brought this issue to you and tried to withdraw the ordinance, the only thing they talked about was safety to the hunters. Not one person on the panel talked about safety to the public. So it's completely off their radar. It's not being discussed at all. I think you should know about it. I hope all of you watched the video because it was recorded and it'll be up hopefully tonight. By the way, the history of this program is from 2005, when a petition was brought before the City Commission by residents in the north side neighborhoods who complained about deer eating their landscaping. Well, I looked up the history of it, and the river flooded that year. So the deer were pushed away from the river and into those neighborhoods, obviously. And the program was created to hunt deer all along the entire north-south axis of the city and out all the way down south of the city into park areas. So really this program is just for bow hunting enthusiasts who don't want to leave the city, who don't want to have to travel far. Thank you.
Wes Philome.
Wes Philome, he, him, his pronouns. I'd like to start by saying, long live George Floyd. A year and 2 weeks ago, during a city commission meeting, I attempted to voice my displeasure with how the city decided to select the interim chief of police. While speaking, my microphone was cut off. Shortly after, the public comment section was born and an avenue was created for those who traditionally haven't had a voice in this community. A year later, an attempt was made to once again silence us by ending public comment. The argument has been made that it's been the same people talking about the same stuff, which couldn't be further from the truth. Christopher Korn, time and time again, has used the public comment section to discuss agenda items and other matters of concern relating to the city. Brandon Krieger has consistently done the same. Faith Shields Dixon a month ago used public comment to raise concerns on the lack of decorum by certain city leaders during meetings, but was ignored, and now it's reached a point where you all have no choice but to address it. We're allowed to speak for 2.5 minutes. We take up so little time. Why try to silence us? How is it possible that our city leaders want to hold us regular folks to a higher standard than you all are willing to hold yourselves? Commissioner Garrick has been allowed to flat out call a business owner pumping millions into our community a liar to his face. He's been able to question activist integrity by equating our fight for equality to attention-seeking and publicity stunts, which is beyond offensive and dehumanizing. Deputy Mayor Pepcorn was allowed to question another commissioner's sobriety and stick his middle finger in the air unabated, all during commission meetings. Yet those who utilize public comment get all the scrutiny. I'm requesting that a commissioner task our city attorney's office to take a look at other shining examples of public comment statutes across the country and work to implement them here in our cities so that our right to speak cannot be threatened or taken away so easily. The First Amendment is the bedrock of this country. No one should be afraid to sign up to speak, no matter how many times they show up to City Hall. I'm also requesting that you all consider enhancing the code of ethics for city leaders. It's time far more becomes far better. Thank you.
Item 27, application for a Class GH alcohol beverage license for Youngblood Coffee Roasters doing business as Youngblood Coffee to be located at 623 2nd Avenue North, continued from the 7/26/21 regular meeting. Steve Sprague to address.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioner. Steve Sprague, City Auditor. Today we have 2 liquor licenses. The first one being the beer and wine license for Youngblood Coffee. We've gone through the background check and presented it to the Liquor Control Board, and it comes to you with a recommendation of approval.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this application? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mayor.
Excuse me? Commissioner Garrick.
Is there other examples of coffee houses that have liquor licenses in Fargo?
The other ones that I could think of were most recently was Atomic Coffee that didn't have a food component. Also, there's a Black Coffee and Waffle, which was more restaurant than it is just a coffee shop. Atomic had theirs for a couple of years, and then they weren't doing the sales that they thought, and so they let it come back.
Continue.
So were they successful in meeting the 50/50 standard?
Yes.
They were?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Application for Class A Club alcoholic beverage license for Touchmark at Harwood Groves, doing business at Touchmark at Harwood Groves to be located at 1200 Harwood Drive South, continued from the 7/26/21 meeting. Steve Sprague.
So Touchmark currently has an F license, which is full alcohol, but they want to have as an amenity to their residents a bar feel atmosphere, and so they're applying for a club license. The club license is for organizations that have been in existence for 20 years and have at least 200 members, and it is organized for civic, fraternal, social, or business purposes. So the question that came up at Liquor Control was, are they going to be open to the public? And it's really a management decision, kind of similar to the Fargo Country Club or something like that, whether or not it's open to the public. But their intention that they expressed was that it would be for their members, the residents that are at Touchmark.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this application? Anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Strand?
Thank you. I'm just curious, so if I go to Touchmark this coming weekend to attend Larry McLeod's 93rd birthday, can I have a margarita with him?
Again, it would be a management decision whether or not it's open to the public.
So they decide it moment by moment?
They didn't expressly tell me what their intent was, whether they were going to be open to the public. You know, I guess I would think that if you know, if you're going to go to an event with a resident there, that you may be able to get a beverage.
You may have to buy it from John.
Yeah, I would think so.
Bottom line, I think it's really great that they're socializing the way they do there, and I think that's all good, just so we don't run into any unintended consequences. Somebody brings a family member and all of a sudden they're breaking the law.
Correct.
You know, however we can avoid that, or they can.
Roll call, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Special assessment for nuisance abatement fees. Steve Sprague to explain.
So the nuisance abatement fees consist of code enforcement, Dutch elm disease, snow removal, and mowing charges. The mowing are from the 2020 year, the snow removal through the 2020-2021 winter. Dutch elm disease are from the 2020 year, and then code enforcement. We did the cutoff on code enforcement in about April of this year. Notice has gone out to the people that have been affected, and I know that there is at least one person that would like to address the commission.
President wishes to speak to the commission.
Yes, I'd like to see if you could abate the bill that I have.
Could you give your name, please?
My name is Grant Alex.
Yes.
And the property I'm talking about is 1020 7th Avenue North. And it's right underneath the water tower on 7th Avenue there. And I visited with the guys in the department. My property, the road in front of it has been under construction for almost the last 2 years. It's actually closed still on 7th Avenue from 10th Street to a good chunk towards downtown. So I've been up there a few times trying to get the lawn mowed, but you really couldn't get to it. And you probably ask me why I don't have the renters mow it. I've provided them with 4 lawnmowers over the last 3 years, and all 4 of them have been stolen. So unless it's tacked down, and we've even tried to chain it, and they still manage to steal the lawnmowers. So that's my thing. I just really couldn't get in there to do the work. And I'll give you a good example. And part of it is like the city of Fargo, which has the water tower, which is under construction right now. If you look at the boulevards in front of it, the weeds are almost 3 feet tall. That's right across the street from my thing. I just took the picture yesterday. And again, it's probably the same thing. The road's closed. You can't get to it. The city workers probably couldn't get in there to mow it. It's the same case with me. And I wouldn't be here complaining about it. I just had a tough year, and I don't have the extra $280 to give you. So I'm here begging you to forgive the note. So that's what I'd like to see happen if we could.
Thank you. Is there anybody else present who wishes to speak around? Close the public hearing. Grant, you have something?
Yeah, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just a little background. I did talk to Mr. Alex about this mowing complaint, and staff did follow procedures as far as violation notice. We followed the protocol. So we've got before and after pictures, and I did talk to him several times, and he's at a busy intersection. Through over the last 5 years, we've sent 9 letters to him, and he's complied with most of them. This one does go back to 2020. Like I said, we did follow our protocols. And, we mowed it, and then we assessed a bill of $200 plus our administration fee, and now he has $32.40 for interest charges, finance charges.
I'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the special assessment list.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. I'm not sure. I thought I saw Richard Nelson pop into the meeting and in a wheelchair and leave, but he wanted to address this issue, I believe. Does anybody know? I know he'd gone to some special arrangements to get here.
I think Kimber knows he was having some concerns about something, Kimber? But did he tell you what he was concerned about, his assessment? Steve, does he have an assessment?
He has a couple of assessments. One is for a cleanup on, they're both code enforcement. One, I believe, is for a cleanup of a lot, and I believe the other is for demolition of a house.
And again, Mayor, all I know is he wanted very much to attend to voice his concerns, and I saw him, but I don't know what's happened since.
Mr. Gregg?
Are we gonna check on him? We're gonna see if he wants to speak? Yeah. I wasn't at his property. Is it hard to get to with a lawnmower? He's saying he couldn't get to the spot, so.
I don't know. The one thing to remember about snow and lawn mowing, snow removal and lawn mowing is that it is complaint driven. Somebody, in the neighborhood complained. City staff were able to get there and get it mowed. It is concern. I don't know. That's.
No, we did, like I said, gave them a week notice. And then our contract mowers, they're on, contract, we're able to access that property, mow it fully with both a weed whipper and a mower.
Okay. That's just what I want to know, if it was truly it.
And again, it all depends on when you come up there. When they were there, they probably could do it. When I go there, I live in Horace. If I couldn't get to it that day, I leave. I got a job. I might not be able to get up there again for another
Alex,
3 or 4 weeks.
Public comment is over now. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You can go back and sit down.
That was just the
They're having
point.
discussion.
I just wanted to make sure that if he was able to get to, then we're doing the right thing, that's all.
I think they're getting a mic for Richard.
Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner Strand.
Maybe if Richard's coming to the microphone, or maybe in the meantime, for the sake of information sharing, Steve, I see lots of like Dutch elm removal assessments. People can also, though, on another front, qualify to get assistance with those special assessment charges. Can't they?
Yeah.
Could you explain how to do that, as long as we have a moment?
So a couple of things with the Dutch elm. We have the option, if they sign a petition, to do a 5-year assessment to kind of spread it out and make those payments a little bit easier. And then through the planning department, there is an assistance program that would help low-income, moderate-income individuals with their special assessments, not just these, but other special assessments also.
Thank you. That's really important. People know that.
Steve, on that particular aspect, so his $200, he could do that as a special assessment?
They would have to apply through the planning department. Yep.
Okay. Richard, are you ready?
Hey, Tom. You got the mic, Tom.
You go first.
You want me to talk?
Go ahead. And I'll.
You can use the mic at the stand. We can leave that mic there. You can stand to the mic here. Yes.
One of the things
But we just need a name.
oh, I'm sorry, Sherry McMahon.
Okay.
One concern I have about, so this case involves, the city did some abatement actions, and some of those costs apparently, can be assessed to the property. But these abatement actions, they were carried out last summer, and the first time Richard was notified of the amounts was getting a letter from City Finance in June saying this bill has not been paid, but he'd never gotten a bill. And I contacted inspections, and their position was that sending out any kind of a statement or a bill earlier would have been, quote, a courtesy, and they don't have to do that. And especially for people in difficult financial circumstances, in terms of being able to sort out how they might be able to find a way to pay for these assessments, or, what kind of planning they need to do for the future. Because if they're not paid, then there is a risk of them losing their property to a tax foreclosure. So it just seemed to me that that process of waiting nearly a year to inform the property owner of the amount is really unacceptable. The other piece of it, and inspections did point out that there's many costs with abatement actions, and some of those are borne by the city, and others get, billed in connection with the property. But there's no information on where those dollar numbers come from. 200 and, 200 or $2,873.12. Well, for what? And I think it should be specifically identified what those costs are. And I think property owners deserve to have that information in a much, much more timely manner.
Richard?
I don't know where to, to start or where to go. I tried, we tried everything we could to prepare by cleaning out and going through stuff and getting rid of everything that wasn't absolutely good. In other words, what I'm trying to say here is there was no junk, just stuff. One of the things that I miss sorely is, a good example is gas cans. Now when I want a gas can, I don't have any. They threw all of them away. And all my gas cans had spouts and et cetera. I mean, that's just an example, but now we had probably 3 or 4 coolers. We use them on a freezer that we have to defrost. It likes to get frosted up, so we use that. Well, now if we want to defrost the freezer, we have to borrow coolers to put the food in to keep it fresh while we're defrosting the freezer. Every cockeyed thing, I had crutches, which unfortunately now I've got to use way too much. And I had several sets of crutches, and half of them were wooden. Now, wooden crutches are better in a house, because if you get by an electrical outlet and you touch that aluminum thing on the wrong place, you can get zapped real good.
Richard,
but with a wooden one, you don't have to.
Richard, can I keep you, the question today is you got charged something. You need to address that. If it's a question whether you want to pay or not pay. So try to keep it to the point is you got charged something, why shouldn't you pay?
Okay. I would like to, I guess, no, wait, let me, well, I'm trying to hurry here. I would appreciate it very much if you would waive that amount, because frankly, for us to pay something like that on our survival, I mean, we just don't have enough to go both ways.
Okay. Bruce, you're here to speak to something about this? What is his charges? How much does he owe? Total.
Look,
Bruce, you were going to talk about something else?
Where's that?
I'm going to need to take a look at the list. I believe he has 2 charges, one for a junk abatement and one for a demolition of a house. The demolition came through the commission. You should be aware of that. I believe it's $1,400.
Altogether, it's $25,000.
Mr. Chair, so just a couple things. I think
Yeah, you got $6,000.
Commissioner Pepcorn's going to speak now.
That was that. Yeah, that's that.
So Bruce,
I guess this does include that.
can you talk about how many years have we been working on this approximately?
We worked on his house about 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years.
We worked on the demolition project probably a year and a half or two.
Right, thank you.
And that took us that long. We've been to the Supreme Court on junk abatement from Mr. Nelson. He has two. One is for the junk abatement at his house, 1449 2nd Avenue South. And the other one is the demolition of the home to the north. That's going to be the big one.
So as Commissioner Strand said, he could apply for the ability to have those brought down or paid for? Is that what the program's for?
I don't know of any program
Steve, do you want to address that?
for our abatements.
So, Mr. Chair, one more thing, just to
Mr.
refresh
Pepper.
everybody's memory. So back when we did this, he would have had the option to do that himself too and pay for it, if you remember that. So I just wanted to point that out. This isn't like a last minute thing. This has been going on for 20 years. Actually, the city has spent many, many thousands of dollars in litigation, obviously been out to the state Supreme Court. And so this has been an ongoing thing. And so it's very sad, without a doubt, but I will say the neighbors appreciate it greatly. I mean, they were out there actually helping when they were clearing the lot. They were so appreciative. So thank you.
Steve?
So Nicole informed me that for a process like this, that there is not assistance with the planning department. Their process is with new construction, like roads and sidewalks and that type of thing.
So if he goes on this as we approve it tonight, he would have 20 years to pay off the $2,000 or no?
I believe it's one.
It's a one-year assessment.
They
1
do
year or
these
so.
quicker so that they're not on the taxes for many years.
Right.
It's not like a City of Fargo general assessment for a street or road work.
Pardon me?
It's not like the assessments through the engineering department that are on multiple years. This is a 1 year.
1 year set. Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Strand, do you have the answers you need?
What I needed was to make sure Mr. Nelson was heard by us with this abatement coming down the tracks at him tonight.
Okay.
What was it? What was that?
We understand your concerns, Richard. We're going to stop public hearing now and go to regular commission discussion. Do I have a motion?
Can I just say a couple things? We tried so hard, I went and hired somebody to
We
move
have a
stuff
motion,
out.
yeah.
And these people that we hired ended up ripping us off.
We're done with public hearing, Richard. We're going to go on to business here.
Can we work this out together?
Discussion? No? Roll call vote?
Preston,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Hearing on a dangerous building located at 711 10th Avenue North. Bruce Carlson to explain.
Good evening.
Ty, can we cut the mics over here so we don't get the interference, please? Go ahead, Bruce.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Bruce Charlson. Inspections on a dangerous building action at 711 10th Avenue North. You will have the packet in front of you. And at the beginning is my suggested motion. I suggest you wait to see if the owner is shown or any representative in this case to hear all testimony. This property is located in a predominantly residential neighborhood. It's about 3 blocks east of Roosevelt School and 3 blocks west of Sanford Hospital downtown. It's currently a 70-unit apartment building. It was added onto at various times, but constructed in 1904. There have been issues at this property with the house and both garages. The owner also owns 2 properties directly to the east of this property, and those are 3-unit condo buildings. The owner has not done anything we've requested. Since we became involved after the fire on February 9th, 2021, this property meets 5 of the 10 criteria of dangerous building ordinance. And in your packet, you'll see the timeline, which is very extensive. We received notification of this property from the fire department and through complaints of squatters after the fire. We acted as required by codes and ordinances. We provided for all notices and postings for this action and notified all parties involved. And the inspectors have had several discussions with the owner on demolition of the buildings and the squatters. At this time, I think there's a submittal for demolition of the garages. It's just not approved yet. It was just submitted late last week. The structure was placarded on May 4th, 2021 with the dangerous building notice, and we've monitored ever since. Due to no action by the owner on multiple squatter issues, the inspection department secured the home 8 times and the garage on May 10th, 13th, 18th, June 28th, July 7th, 12th, 16th, and August 4th. The inspection department was required to secure this property so many times, and we will continue to monitor. Due to openings by the squatters, the building is also infested. Inspectors later found work going on the garage where the owner had hired somebody to move one of the garages, and we had to stop work on that. The assessors has provided a statement of valuation on the property. In your packet, you'll see the pictures that attest to deterioration. Your action, or this property has received 35 calls of service to the police department over the past 2 years, and that is the time frame this owner has owned this building. Your action will allow the owner to provide us with a plan for the property. The deadline is October 1st, 2021. And the owner has time to either demolish or bring it up to code. The fire caused a lot of the devastation to the property, so we're not really sure it can be saved. I'll yield the floor to see if the owner is here.
Anyone present wishes to speak to this building?
Yep.
Name?
Brandon Rayboyne. So we have a contract to be torn down. We had a lengthy insurance claim with the fire. Our plan was to tear it down anyway. So the fire was a tough deal, and we had to go through that, deal with insurance, and then we did an asbestos test to verify there's asbestos in there. That took a long time to get done. So that has been concluded. Work's being done there to remove the asbestos as we speak. Asplin has been contracted to tear it down. So.
Any comments to that, Bruce, or are we moving ahead, or we still would go ahead with the dangerous building, right?
Yeah, I'd like the suggested motion so that we
Okay.
have a deadline for the demolition.
Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Preston?
You know, I'm almost amazed when we see these photos. I don't understand how, and granted, there was a fire here, but I don't understand how it could get so bad and the impact that it has on the neighborhood. And I don't understand how a property owner lets it get that far. So, yeah, we need to proceed.
We'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Gary?
Brandon, does October 1 make sense? Are you going to have it down before then?
Absolutely. We've been going as fast as kind of they would allow, so no problem.
Good.
Roll call vote?
Do I need to comment on the commissioner's statements on her understanding or no?
We're kind of done with it. If you wanted to make something, go ahead.
No, I don't. She expressed some concerns. I don't know if it's worth noting or not.
Pardon me?
She expressed some concerns, so I don't know if I should answer her concerns.
Well, she did ask it in public, so you can respond.
Okay. We purchased them 2 years ago. We've torn down the blighted properties next door and turned them into nice townhomes, and we plan to do similar with this. So it is a long-term plan to make it better. So they're certainly not trying to limp that along in its current condition. So we do have plans to make it quite nice.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Garrick.
Yes.
Preston,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, can I just add one more thing real quick? So this might be his last appearance in his official capacity for Bruce Terrelson. I just want to thank him for his service to the city of Fargo. You truly were a change agent for our inspections department. Before you got here, it was much different. And I think all of our charges are to try to make the place better than you found it. And I can testify that you did that with our inspections department. So thank you very much. Obviously, you have a great staff that help you, but I just wanted to thank you for your service and our best wishes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And the neighborhoods, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Growth Plan Amendment for parts of Section 3, 4, 10, 15, 16, and all of Section 9, Township 138 North, Range 49 west of 5th Principal Meridian. Approval recommended by Planning Commission 7/6/21. Donald Crest isn't here tonight.
No, threw it off again.
Aaron and Nathan, okay.
Yep. So I have a bit of a joint presentation for you here tonight for this item. So this is item 27E. I'll just kind of kick things off here quick and hand it over to Nathan to provide a little context, and then back to me to provide some more detail. But in summary, overall, this is just a growth plan amendment for the property generally located south of 52nd Avenue South, west of Interstate 29, east of Veterans Boulevard, and north of 88th Avenue South. The precise boundary here is shown on the map here in yellow. This is a City of Fargo initiated amendment, and it comes to you with a recommendation for approval from the Fargo Planning Commission. So before we jump into too much detail here, in terms of a quick overview and some context, the City of Fargo staff started working with Houston Engineering on a stormwater master plan for the southwestern growth area, which is the subject property here, about 2 years ago. This area is unique in the fact that this is the first time the city has really taken the lead in developing a regional stormwater pond system for a large area like this. And so this master planning effort included an analysis of future land use assumptions in order to calculate stormwater capacity needs. And so staff saw an opportunity to update the existing growth plan for this area, which was originally adopted in 2007, about 14 years ago. And we especially saw this need as we are beginning to see increasing development pressures in this area. And so what's being presented today is really one of the results of this kind of larger master planning effort. And so before we get into the details of the land use growth plan amendment, I'll hand things off to Nathan to talk a little bit more, provide a little bit more context on the stormwater master plan process itself.
All right, thanks, Aaron. So a few years ago, as you guys know, we completed the stormwater master planning for the area shown on your screen here. The reason we initiated this was we knew that this was an area that was going to see quite a bit of additional growth in the city moving forward, and we also knew that this area was going to provide some challenges for serving storm sewer as the growth occurred down here. So we kicked off that stormwater model or master planning and looked at a few different alternatives throughout the study, but really kind of honed in on two alternatives. The first alternative here shown on screen is how we historically have served storm sewer throughout the entire city. Consists of main trunk storm sewer lines running from a point of outfall, which on this map or this area would be drain 27, and run all the way over to the interstate. Through the master planning here that we developed here, though, we found that due to the distance between drain 27 and the interstate here, the pipes that would have had to been constructed for this area would have been rather large, much larger than what we historically install throughout the city. As a result of this increased size of piping, the cost to serve this area went up quite a bit. As you can see on the screen here, we estimated in order to properly serve this area with storm sewer have been roughly about $26,000 per acre, which is about $7,000 more than what historically we've seen in the past 10 or so years throughout the city. So with that known at that point, then we also looked at, as Aaron mentioned here, and as you guys actually approved back in February of 2019, this large regional stormwater pond approach. We do believe this is the most cost-effective solution to serve this area with stormwater moving forward here as development continues to progress. And it actually really is positioning the necessary stormwater ponds in the best location possible. The area that the pond is going to be located on would have provided quite a bit of challenges in order to be developed due to the elevation of it and the floodplain impacts. So by centralizing the stormwater pond in one location, it provides opportunity for the other pieces of land in this area that is a little bit higher, better developable land to not have to be encumbered with ponds. So we completed that, moved forward, and as I mentioned, back in 2019, you guys approved the land acquisition. Since then, a little bit of update what we've been doing. In June of 19, we were able to acquire the SRF loan through the North Dakota Industrial Commission. And the past couple of years, we've been working closely with the planning department, looking at that land use study, which then helped feed the project design to make sure that we were properly sizing the pond. And then, of course, we were completing the permitting aspects of the project. We were able to acquire all the necessary permits here at the end of 2020, which led us to be able to bid phase 1 of the project and construct it. And what we constructed this past summer is shown in the red outline. I know Brenda has shown some previous photos in the construction updates, but the red dashed outline is what we were able to construct. That's phase 1. We anticipate as development continues to progress here that we'll move into phase 2 in the upcoming years. With that, I'll turn back over to Aaron.
All right, thank you. So with that bit of background and context, we come back now to the future land use map here, which is what we're asking for action on here tonight. So in your packet and on the screen in front of you is the proposed growth plan amendment. I'll flip to the next slide here, which actually shows a comparison to what's being proposed, which is on the right, compared to the 2007 land use plan, which is shown on the left. They are stylistically different, but once you kind of start looking at some of the details here, there's really nothing too major in terms of the actual changes. Just a quick rundown of the colors on the proposed map. The green area is public and open space. Primarily that's the stormwater pond and then the drainage channels, for example. Yellow areas are low density residential. Orange is medium density residential. Brown is high density residential. Purple is neighborhood mixed use. The gray area right kind of in the center of the map there is town center mixed use, which is kind of a high intensity kind of center of activity for this area. And then the red is commercial, just to kind of orient you on the map there. And so like I said, not a whole lot is changing. The two biggest changes that I do want to point out, however, is number one, obviously the changes in the stormwater infrastructure for this area. The proposed land use plan takes those into consideration, then the adjacent land uses kind of interplay with those changes in context. The other thing I want to point out is the introduction of the mixed use land use classification. That's something that the 2007 growth plan really didn't have a whole lot of outside of the downtown area, for example. Overall, staff believes that the land use assumptions are more accurately aligned with the visions of GO 2030. The GO 2030 comp plan was adopted in 2012, which was after the 2007 land use plan, for example. Provides opportunities for increased density, mix of land uses, green stormwater infrastructure. One of the opportunities, for example, with the stormwater drainage channels is to line them with off-street bike trails, for example. And so there's a lot of elements from GO 2030 that kind of come into play with an opportunity such as this that the updated land use plan is intended to reflect. And so lastly, the last thing I'll point out here is that staff really looks at this as an interim step forward. It's essentially an update to the work done in 2007 that will help guide decision-making in the near term. But we are looking to do a more comprehensive citywide growth plan update here in the next couple of years. And so just kind of making an improvement in this area for the time being and hoping to come back with something more comprehensive in the future. So
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak to this amendment? Any public wants to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing. This is the motion recommended, Aaron?
correct.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve or
Commissioner Preston?
move the motion, recommended motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Garrett, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Commissioner
ask a
Preston.
question. So Aaron, if you'd go back to that map, can you point to me some of the property, excuse me, around the retention pond is city-controlled and city-owned? Can you just outline that?
Yeah, I might have Nathan correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this tract of land right here, if you can see that cursor,
Is that it?
is the
Just that?
city-owned property.
Okay. So are you getting some pressure for development in that immediate area now?
Not on the city-owned tract per se, but we have seen development pressures. For example, the Sanford and Park District Sports Complex. This was a subdivision that came before you recently, right here.
Okay.
38th Street South is currently under construction, as is 64th Avenue. And then we've heard from developers in the area just starting to get their plans in line, I guess, for future development. One thing I failed to mention too is that we did have 2 open houses back in June, and so we were able to visit with a number of the property owners within the area, as well as interested citizens, and able to take some of their vision into consideration with the proposal here.
Commissioner Preston.
A couple more follow-up questions, if I could. So you might have mentioned this, but what's the build-out timeframe for the retention pond? The reason I'm asking all these questions is this retention pond had certainly stimulated some concerns about leapfrog development. And so the reason I'm asking about pressure for development is that.
So, good question. We don't have a time frame for the full build out of the pond today. It's really going to be development driven. So it's phase 1 was initial one. We really want to get started on it, get it excavated, and also get a lot of the excavated material is going to be excess material that needs to, find a location for it. And quite a bit of it is getting incorporated into the future 64th Avenue overpass this summer as well. So it's good timing to utilize that extra clay as well. So the second phase of that pond construction is unknown at this point, but will be determined in the future as development occurs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So some say we continue to progress down this direction with growth, right? Sanford's putting in their athletic complex. You would expect some residential to start evolving as well. We've already seen south by Walmart some growth as well. So we already are starting to advance, right?
Correct.
And there's not many places that you can go north of this. When you're on Happy Areas on that boulevard, there's not a lot of free space up there, is there?
North end of the city, not currently.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote.
Preston?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. COVID-19 update. I have Desi Fleming and I have our new health officer, Dr. Tracy Newman, I think, on board. Yep, they're both here.
Yep.
I think Commissioner Strand had asked for an update. John, is that right?
I had, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. If I could get my first slide up, please. Cass County currently has 165 active cases with 706 active cases in North Dakota. By comparison, Cass had just 20 active cases on July 1, so we are seeing a jump in infection rates. The 14-day rolling average positivity rate has also climbed to 4.4% as compared to 1.3% on July 1. Hospitalizations remain fairly low in our area, but they have increased. There are currently around 15 individuals in the COVID units in our local health systems. There have been no new deaths in Cass County for the past few weeks. Next slide, please. The age categories with the most active cases in Cass is the 30 to 39-year-old demographic. but you will note from the graph that we currently have active cases in all age categories. The second graph represents the age breakdown of cumulative COVID cases across the state, so this has been throughout the pandemic. We've heard a lot in the news about variants lately, especially with the changes with the Delta variant, which our health officer, Dr. Newman, will address further shortly. As of August 5th, several variants have been identified in North Dakota, including the Delta variant. Disease control last week said the Delta variant increased by 120 cases, which was a 364% increase. Almost half of the counties in North Dakota have confirmed Delta cases. The Delta variant is now most likely the predominant strain causing new cases in North Dakota and across the nation. Next slide, please. Cass County vaccination rates continue to slowly increase. The following slide shows rates as of August 8th. The slide is showing the fully vaccinated rates. Our lowest rate remains in the 12 to 18-year-old age group at 31.4%. As you can see, rates increase as you move to older age demographics, but this leaves many in our county at risk for infection. It's also important to note that if you are receiving a 2-dose series vaccination, it's critical to get both doses so you are protected to the highest level the vaccine provides. Due to the new developments with the Delta variant, the CDC released updated guidance the end of July when Cass County was designated as a county with substantial spread of COVID. Those recommendations included encouraging vaccination for everyone eligible who is 12 years and older. The next recommendation is to wear masks in indoor public spaces until we can get our vaccination rates higher, which includes those fully vaccinated. And lastly, the CDC provided guidance to K-12 schools on how to return children safely to in-person learning. The CDC guidance provided are recommendations, not requirements or mandates, and do allow decision-making at the local or individual level. When I talk about decision-making on an individual level, I do want you to be aware that not everyone is afforded that opportunity. In December of 2020, I was diagnosed with cancer, and this past May, I spent 7 weeks at the University of Minnesota undergoing a stem cell transplant. All of my natural immunity and vaccination history are gone, and I'm not yet able to be vaccinated again against COVID, which is why I'm not attending this meeting in person due to increased risk of exposure. I'm not telling you all this for sympathy, simply awareness. So tonight I'm speaking not only as a public health person, but as a representative of those in the community that are not able to get vaccinated, whether it be timing for immunocompromised, those having contraindications to the vaccine, or those children under 12 that are not yet eligible to receive the vaccine. When you are considering vaccination, think of it not only as protecting yourself, but protecting others in the community. Our role as public health is to educate and inform the community about the changing dynamics of this pandemic so people understand what the risks are and how they can make an informed choice to protect themselves and others. Vaccination is our best prevention against serious disease and our first line of defense. Adding other layers of prevention such as masking in indoor public spaces, social distancing, adequate ventilation, and hand washing will also help. We will continue to monitor the situation closely and act in the best interest of this community. I will be totally honest, my staff and other healthcare providers, as well as many in the community, are tired, and the thought of another COVID surge is quite overwhelming. Unfortunately, this is not the time to give up on our efforts, but we need the community's help to make a difference and respond to this latest guidance as a proactive step to keep our community safe. Again, I urge you to consider getting vaccinated. There are 74 providers in Cass County that can provide COVID vaccine. Fargo Cass Public Health offers walk-in clinics every Tuesday from noon to 6 and by appointment at our 1240 25th Street location. You can also visit vaccinefinder.org to find a location convenient for you. Next, I would like to now introduce Dr. Tracy Newman, who is our health officer for Fargo Cass Public Health. Dr. Newman is an established local pediatrician and also holds a master's degree in public health. She's been a great addition to our team. Dr. Newman?
Thank you, Desi, and thank you to the commissioners. I was asked just to provide a little bit more detail about kind of COVID-19 and the changing landscape with the Delta variant. So I'm happy to try and do that tonight. We know that in the United States as a whole, we are now averaging more than 100,000 new cases every day and almost 500 deaths per day. There are currently more than 44,000 people that are hospitalized with COVID-19, and this is 4 times the level that we had seen in June. So it's very clear that in the United States, the viral spread is now predominantly among unvaccinated individuals, the largest population of which are children under the age of 12 who are not yet eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Since the start of the pandemic, the United States has seen 4.3 million total pediatric cases of COVID-19 and at least 400 pediatric deaths. In recent weeks, children have made up a higher proportion of the overall infections, and this trend, unfortunately, is predicted to continue. For example, this past week, we saw nearly 94,000 pediatric cases in our country, and this is continuing a trend of substantial increase. The week prior to that, ending in July 29th, we saw 72,000 cases, and that had been up from the week prior of 39,000. So you can see how quickly this is escalating in our pediatric population. These are increases of 85% and more from week to week. Next slide, please. And just to give a little idea of what we're seeing in North Dakota, I wanted to present some data. This is just of children who are old enough to be vaccinated, so in our 12 to 17 age range. So please bear in mind these numbers are higher when you take in all of children under the age of 18. But as of July, we've had 16% of kids 12 to 17 test positive for COVID-19 in our state. As of mid-July, North Dakota had reported 24 hospitalizations in this age range. Our state hospitalization rate is 3.25 per 1,000 cases. And we've had 8 cases in North Dakota of something called MISC, which is a very serious complication of COVID in kids. It stands for multi-inflammatory syndrome in children. And North Dakota has reported 1 death in this age range. Next slide, please. So, we're learning more and more about the Delta variant and why these numbers are increasing so quickly. We know that the Delta strain spreads much more easily from person to person with earlier viral strains. In epidemiology, we use something called the reproductive number, or R0, and this is the expected number of cases directly generated by 1 case in a population. So said another way, it's estimated currently that the R0 of the Delta strain is anywhere from 6 to 10. So this means on average that 1 person could potentially infect 6 to 10 other people. This is a very contagious R0. This is similar to things we see with chickenpox, and it's actually higher than that of what we saw with smallpox. And the reason that the reproductive number is so important is we use it in a formula to figure out what we need for herd immunity thresholds. So let's just say this reproductive number is 6 to 8, which some research has suggested. We'll even do the lower. That would mean that we would now need a community herd immunity level of somewhere in the range of 83 to 97%. So much higher than that was said with previous strains. And these types of herd immunities are what we need for things like measles and mumps. So the Delta variant is surging, as Desi said, across the country, not just here in North Dakota. It's quickly grown from, a very few cases in early May to now greater than 93% of cases that are being sequenced. And public health experts are predicting we could continue to see 100,000 to 200,000 new cases per day this fall. And just finally, I wanted to touch on, this has been in the media, although it is rare, there have now been what we call breakthrough infections reported. These mostly involve very mild symptoms. So I just want to reassure us that vaccines are working. They're still preventing severe illnesses, hospitalizations, and death. But there is new data to say that some people infected with Delta carry higher viral loads, and they could potentially spread the virus to others. So as such, Fargo Cass Public Health is continually evaluating the data and the changing science to determine the best community mitigation responses. Given that Cass County is now in that substantial transmission risk, as Desi said, and in accordance with our new CDC guidance, we are recommending people consider masking even if they are fully vaccinated, especially in indoor congregate settings. And then vaccines can help prevent Delta from further spreading. And we, of course, highly encourage people to be vaccinated. Thank you. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to both of you for this information. Desi, that's very powerful information you shared with us. And we know we've stressed our people to the nth degree, and I hope you all stay strong going forward. Dr. Newman, my question may be inappropriately relative to other hats you wear, but I'll ask it in a public health setting. How can, with the data showing us that the young people aren't accessing or able to be vaccinated and is where the transmission and spread is happening and the highest risks are for everybody, how can we support the school district? You know, we don't have authority over the rules of the school district, and the legislature has dictated that local jurisdictions shall implement policies and so on. And I don't want to sit on the fray and leave the school district. I don't want to throw them under the bus, the school leaders. I'd like them to know that we have their backs, however we can have their backs. Does anybody have any suggestion how we can bolster their ultimate decisions so that it's more of a community?
And Commissioner Strand, you may not know, or you probably know, Dr. Tracy Newman is on the school board as well.
I do. That's why I'm asking, and I don't want to mix her messages of her public health hat versus her public elected official hat. But if there's insight here, or if Desi can go around it and not worry about conflicting views, I just want to know how we can help the school district or support them.
I think I can speak to this as the health officer, and I am in no way representing Fargo Public Schools. Thank you for the question. And Desi and I did not go through this in detail, but part of the new CDC guidance that was released, and it is certainly in accordance with the American Academy of Pediatrics and multiple other medical organizations across the country. They have released almost separate guidelines for K through 12 education. So a little bit different from what we've said for you guys tonight for the community. And within that is the recommendation for universal masking of all students, teachers, staff, and visitors to schools, regardless of your vaccination status, and really regardless of community transmission rates. So it shouldn't matter that we are whatever risk we're in. And though I'm happy to talk about that, why that came to be or how that came to be, I can tell you that the Fargo Public School Board meets tomorrow night, and they will be discussing this very issue. We have a panel of experts coming to advise us, and the board will examine these new recommendations. But it is ultimately left up to local school districts and local school boards to decide what each school district will do, whether they follow these recommendations or not.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, either Dr. Newman or Desi. I'm sitting here thinking, the message has definitely not gotten out to the community about the recommendation for masks indoors, because the places I frequent have been usually the early adopters of this, and they're not wearing masks yet. So what do we need to do to get that message out? Is there something that we need to do up here? Is it a media campaign? What do we need to do to get that word out?
And we have been doing some media campaigns, it's kind of, I at Public Health, we have made our entire building again wearing masks, just because we know it's important, and we're hoping to set that example. I guess it just takes individuals kind of starting to do that again. I know we've had some businesses that have implemented that. I've also seen signs on some businesses that say, unvaccinated people need to wear masks. So it's half right, but we really are looking to have everybody masked. So we are trying to do some media. The state has been a little bit slow to put out any messaging, and I don't know that they will. Though it's going to take local effort. So really, I think it needs to be kind of a grassroots effort from all of us. to support it, to talk about it, and to say why it's important. You know, we're not happy. No one is happy to continue masking, but we're also not willing to drop the ball at this point and go back up into a major surge. So we're willing to do what we have to do to get this back under control again.
Commissioner Preston.
So Desi, I have to also commend you for telling your story because it's such a good example of why this is so important. And I know that there are other employees who are concerned. I would suggest that maybe we need to look at an employer policy and go back to masking at least as an employer. And I know the Board of Health meets this week. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if the group would be open to some policy recommendations coming from them or how this gets moved forward.
So the Board of Health is meeting this week, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Strand, any other comment?
Thank you. Commissioner Preston, I would absolutely invite the Public Health Board to speak up if they've got something to say to us. I wouldn't wait for us to give them permission to lead in that arena that they are the experts in. And I'll say this, we are blessed here in the upper Midwest to be a distance from everybody. So things take time to get to North Dakota. We saw this last year. We had the Fargo Dome full of beds thinking that was all here right now, and it took months to get here. So we have the good fortune of learning from other people. And it gives us the time to act accordingly, proactively. So my message and why I want this on the agenda and why I want it on every agenda, frankly, for a while, we need to be prepared to act if it continues going the wrong direction. And I think, Commissioner Preston, you're correct. We should look at our own employee force. We should look at our own facilities. We could look at our own buildings, but we need to be prepared to act. We aren't here quite yet, but I'm guessing it's going to be here faster than we think. And then what? So my cautions to all of us is let's be anticipatory of what's coming. Let's be willing to act when it's needed or in advance, and we have to be willing to do what it takes in advance, not after the fact. So, Mayor, if nothing else, like the HR policies, get them in front of us to know what they will look like. Remind us what they look like so that if we get to certain thresholds, they're activated. We're not surprised. We know it's coming. Gives us a chance to stave these things off with behavior that might mitigate it. But we're in trouble potentially, and time helps us, but we're in trouble.
Desi, just one thing is the CDC has made recommendations for the schools, but does not seem that they've singled out anybody else. You and I have both seen some employees now coming back and wearing masks. Hornbachers lately, the employees are starting to wear masks again. It kind of looks like the industry may go back to that again, or is that not what you're seeing?
I think we are going to get some, we heard in the earlier part of the pandemic, businesses like the backing of the city, if nothing else, to come out as local leaders in support of what they are trying to do. I'm not talking mandates or whatever. I'm just saying that I think if we can get everybody who has a platform to start talking about, vaccination and masking and why we need it right now, I think that would be helpful.
And Dr. Tracy Newman, you said one time as well, it's about getting our kids back to school. So one of your concerns, you won't have a vaccine for the 6 to 12 age group until probably November, December. So in some ways, Mr. Strand's right, actions now are be critical if the kids do stay back in school. I think, Dr. Newman, you had an example of a school out east that kids went back and you had a high count of the disease in that population. So that's one of the reasons the CDC is taking on the education system, but we truly, Commissioner Strand, would have to look at employee policy. So I take that. Any other questions, Commissioner Preston?
If I can just make one more statement. I think the strongest thing we can do for the school system is to try to control the community spread. So that piece we do have some influence over. And I would say that there's a few things we can do there.
Any other comments? Thank you very much. Welcome aboard, Dr. Tracy Newman. Happy to have you on board. Make those tough decisions, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
Update on mobile food trucks. We'll do that and then we'll take a break. Grant Larson, you've been waiting to tell us about this. I know you're excited and
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I am. Commissioner Gary asked for update on the mobile food, so I'm happy to provide that opportunity at this time. Just a little bit of the mobile food history here, but back in June of 2018, Nicole and planning, we put something together in front of you for a pilot project for the mobile food vendors. That's the map that you see in that area that's in yellow. This is specifically targeted to the downtown area as a pilot project. You guys had a lot of debate about it and went back and forth. Ultimately, because of some variables, you voted to delay the proposal indefinitely for staff to work on it. I then came back in June of 19 and you approved to continue a pilot program, and we did Food Truck Fridays, if you remember that, which was at the south end of the parking lot here. And we did that through September of 19. The goal was to monitor the interest of the public as well as the food vendors and try to establish a food coalition to develop a mobile food program in Fargo. Unfortunately, in September 17, one of the champions for the mobile food vendors, Jason Halverson, passed away. And then we had a mobile food event for him at our Fargo Public Health. So after following that, then of course COVID hit, so we had to pause. That brings us to today, where Commissioner Gary wanted an update to where we're at, specifically if operators or mobile food vendors are allowed to operate in the city Fargo rights of way. Current ordinance 1803, use and care of streets and sidewalks, prohibits, and I won't read it verbatim, but basically goods to be offered on public streets. You can see this a little archaic because it talks about a stand or wagon. So we're talking mobile food trucks, but this ordinance goes back a ways. So it is unlawful to sell and have mobile food units upon the rights of way. The bottom, currently mobile food vending is limited to private property and or sponsored events that are permitted through the city of Fargo. Example, downtown street fair. I decided to give you a little snapshot. On the left-hand side is our current mobile food license application, and on the right is the definitions that complement the different tiers. The tiers basically, as you go up 1, 2, and 3, are the risk food level to the public that we pay. They pay a little bit more for those licenses because we have to spend more time in those units, whether it's up front to make sure that they have the right equipment or actually in the mobile food units. And then we have the one that's mobile retail prepackaged food. That's just everything that's ready to eat food that can be sold. In the middle is a current snapshot of our licenses. We have 2 prepackaged, 29, 30, and 13, 1, 2, and 3 licenses currently. Downtown Community Partnership provided me with a survey. Now this goes back to during COVID, but they did send this out. Following the Food Truck Fridays, they wanted to capture, because they're a big part of it too, to help us promote that. And we worked with them in concert to try to get the promotion out there for the Food Truck Fridays. So as you can see, the first one going from the left is, did you patronize it? And unfortunately, a lot of people did not. Overwhelming no. The bottom left, do you think they're good for? No, this is specifically downtown community. They said yes. Would you like to see more mobile food? Yes. And bottom right should be on public or private, and they both 87%. So that's appreciate that survey they put out for us. Commissioner Garrett contacted me about a month ago, and I told him I'd like to do a current survey. So this is from myself and the health unit, trying to capture a little bit more information and interest from the mobile food vendors. So you can see here, out of that we had about 75 units, mobile food units. About 20 of them responded to this. We had it open for 2 weeks. But you can see there that the mobile food truck, they talk about fully contained. There's about 11 of them. And then the trailers, that's when we talk about mobile food units that could go in the rights of way. That's what you're kind of looking at as far as the demographics for this population that answered this survey. Do they think there are enough opportunities? They said no. We would like to get access to the public right-of-ways. That was 13 vendors. The other ones, the 6, said, we can manage it. We'd like more coordination with the city departments, and they overwhelmingly said yes. We would like more coordination to help facilitate whatever might need to give more opportunity. Here's some pros and cons that going across the nation is, and they apply to locally as well. And so you can see the pros, obviously, increased opportunity, could spawn new businesses, provides consumers with new food options, and we do have our licensing fees. Cons, adverse effects in public safety, congested streets for the PD, litter and possible noise, competition with brick and mortar food establishments that pay rent and or property taxes. Big one is regulatory complexity. Right now, we're not a Washington, D.C. or Denver. You know, to have a food truck roll in here from the cities on the weekend, it's going to be logistically kind of hard to license them, as well as, you know, do the sanitation of food and safety compliance. That's just a con. And then the last one would be public concerns with type and location. If they can just roll up anywhere and start smoking brisket, you know, some neighbor might be offended. I like barbecue, but some people maybe not. So those are some cons that I listed. Valid questions that this came back up when we were working with planning, the other departments internally, you know, restricting a specific right-of-ways. And I know I've talked to Mr. Johnson here about that. That can be done in the ordinance if we wanted to so choose. You know, Broadway, the different busy streets, angled parking, et cetera. Different cities have buffering distances from brick and mortar, parks, school districts, 100 feet, 200 feet, whatever buffering we would like to establish. Hours of operation, dimensions of the mobile food units, so they fit and don't cause public safety, hindrance on public safety. Coordination, internal staff, who would address what issues if we have them, and potential liability for the city of Fargo. Just valid questions that some to throw your way, just give you an update. And if we go towards the public right-of-way prohibitions, this is some that we see that it would be applicable. You know, obviously sale of food, not T-shirts, non-alcoholic beverages. You can't sell people driving by. You know, it's people walking up to your unit. Loudspeakers shouldn't be used. The lighting, freestanding signage. You know, it's got to be self-contained there again, which means no structures, canopies, tables. Can't utilize city trash. It's got to be fully contained. They have to take their own trash, as well as be in charge of any liquid waste or other waste that would impact public right-of-way. At this time, I look at possible option as do not change the current ordinance, which will not allow food units on City of Fargo rights-of-way, and we can assist with coordination of more public and private sponsored opportunities, or you can revise the current ordinance to allow mobile food units on the right-of-ways within the City of Fargo, and we can develop a program requirements of licensing as such. A couple things I would consider was we could possibly do implementing a temporary use permit. The downtown sidewalk vendors you see downtown, that's kind of gets the city departments in there. That would help us, like we talked about the logistical piece as far as regulating, licensing, controlling locations. I think that would really help us as far as a city if we did proceed forward. And then just self-contained units. It's trucks and trailers. It's not stick stands, right? And if we did move forward, obviously we're getting towards the end of 21 in the summer, and we'd have to work on it internally, but we could come back with something for 22. Take any questions at this time.
Commissioner Garrett.
Yeah, so in my mind, we haven't done a true pilot yet. We did it on private areas, and we did it in a part of city-owned lots to see if people liked it, and I think people did like it. I think I'd like to see us try it in different areas around the city, not just downtown, and see if people want it. If it goes great, then we can move forward. If it doesn't go great, then we can stop right there and have some data to show that it was successful or not. I think this year's kind of a moot issue. We're not gonna be able to get it off the ground this year. So I think over the winter, we can get some parameters together, have a pilot program or a test program, do it for a month or two in areas of Fargo that we so choose, and see if people show up with their trucks and see people patronize it and see if it works or not. I just want to give it a chance. You know, cities all around this country and around the world do this, so it might be complex, but it's certainly not impossible. And I think there is an appetite for people out there to have these type of things around. So that would be my request, is that we at least let these folks come up with a proposal for next year, a time frame, a structure for all the legal matters that you brought up, and then we can vote on that structure and see if we want to try it out next year.
How about let's try to put it in motion? Can you do that?
That was a motion, I think. We'll allow Grant Larson and his team to put a proposal together to do a pilot for next summer That'll give a framework for licensing and the locations that we want to try it on both public and private land.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Strand, discussion, Mr. Preston.
I'd like to hear a little bit more why a pilot. I think we've kind of established that they work. And if the food truck proprietors want to try in a different area of the city, let them try, it seems to me. So I don't know what you're meaning by a pilot.
I was trying to be judicious. So I was trying to say, let's do it for a summer. Come back to us, give us the information and say, here's what was good, here it was bad, here's how we can fix what was bad. And then we make it a full-time thing after that. But by pilot, I meant, let's do it next summer. And
So
then-
implement it and then evaluate it,
Right,
basically.
exactly. Yep.
Sounds good.
There's a food vendor down on 32nd Avenue that does it outside of an auto store, and they've been there forever. It works out pretty well. You are suggesting this would be throughout the community, right?
Right, and it would be designated areas. It wouldn't be a free-for-all, right? If it was up on private right-of-way, it wouldn't be in the middle of the road. There would be parameters that you would be able to tell us about. So it would still be licensed, it would still be done professionally and safely.
Any other discussion or comments? Roll call vote?
Gehrig?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. We'll take a brief recess till 6:45. Call the meeting back to order. I think, Bruce, you have to make your way to the podium one more time. I know you're loving coming to the podium tonight, right? Yeah. Dr. Gary wants to give you a round of applause again. You're going to tell us what's going on in 717 3rd Avenue North, the BB House.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Bruce Charleston Inspections on an update on 717 3rd Avenue North, commonly called the BB House. Over the last month, we've had a lot of back and forth discussion. Their permit was supposed to be secured by, I think, this week. And one of the big issues that came up again was funding, and you heard a lot about that. So I told them that wasn't going to be an issue this time, because I did not want to come back here and say the same thing for the 4th time. So they did get a permit last week. It's been a long time coming. We wrote a permit for a single-family home. And we will continue to monitor the property. Again, they get 360 days, I believe, on this permit. We have had additional complaints on infestation and weeds, and we'll continue to monitor that. So that's the update. It's hopefully done and will get completed. And I encourage you all to go by the property and view the progress. Any questions?
Any questions by any commissioners? Commissioner Strand, was it this your item or no? No? Okay.
Except I'll say, Mayor, it's really good news to have a historic property salvaged. It's not easy, but it takes time and heart, and I want to thank your department for holding us to task so that we implemented the standards we expect of everybody.
Commissioner Pepcorn?
Just real quick, Mr. Chair, the frustrating thing to me is, so now they have a whole longer schedule again. And to me, if you drive by, I do drive by there. I drove by there yesterday. There's weeds 3 feet tall and there's pigeons doing damage. And so if we were all sitting here when they told us the inspirational story of how great it was going to be, and now it sits worse than it was. And so that's just so disappointing. And I know that you have to follow these rules, but it's just, I just wish we could do something a little bit quicker. And I've talked to Bruce about it. And so, but that's just, our hands are tied, but it's so sad and frustrating. Thank you.
See, Bruce, sometimes people maintain something in their portfolio as they leave. Do you want to keep this on your portfolio and finish it up for us?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I'll watch the commission meetings and see how it goes. Hopefully it doesn't come back here in 360 days.
Okay. Applications for property tax exemptions for improvements made to buildings. Do I have a motion?
I so move, or second.
Moved and seconded, Pepcorn and Preston. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston, Garrick.
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now I'm going to give you the mayor's budget, but I'll move because I'm petitioning my commissioners to accept it as a preliminary budget. And I promise we've changed a few things, so we're going to try to make it a little bit quicker than last time, but I do want to address the concerns that the commissioners have had in regards to this budget. So again, this is the 2022 City of Fargo Mayor's preliminary draft budget presentation. This is the second time you've seen it since I did show it to you at a special commission meeting on July 26. In reflection of some of the comments received from the commission, I've added a few slides in this presentation for transparency and clarification. Just as a reminder, the North Dakota Century Code requires municipalities to prepare a budget each year. Home Rule Charter directs the mayor to prepare and present draft budget to the City Commission. Tomorrow, actually, August 10th, is the legal deadline for us to prepare and submit preliminary budget for the upcoming year. Just as a reminder, I presented 6 major objectives for this preliminary budget, including number 1 is attracting and retaining a talented team. Another critical objective is funding essential infrastructure. Next up is reinforcing strong commitments to public safety. The next important objective is supporting community equity initiatives. Number 5 is funding delayed requests due to COVID-19. And 6 and final objective is efficient and effective use of federal funds. So let's put those main objectives to work by reviewing 6 major initiatives in this preliminary 2022 budget. Core neighborhood plan implementation, body-worn camera integration at the Fargo Police Department, investments in street-level excellence, harm reduction and homeless support, an emphasis on code enforcement, as we talked about tonight, and reinvigorating the Fargo Dome. Now, let's look at the major categories of our general fund. Again, folks, it's no surprise, the bread and butter, the core of what makes us great, are the people of Team Fargo. It takes people to serve our residents well, and over 77% of our general fund is invested in Team Fargo employees. About 22% of the general fund goes towards operating expenses, and about 0.3% is invested in capital funding efforts. For 2022, we received requests for a total of 38 new employees funded by the general fund. And I'm recommending the addition of 18 new employees, 8 in public safety and 10 in non-public safety areas. Our general funds which are not funded through the general fund, we saw a request for 4 new employees, and I'm recommending addition of 2 in the enterprise fund. On this slide, we graphically represent the modest increase in the 2022 preliminary budget would have relative to the 1,024 current employees we see on a full-time headcount. As we discussed, this year's recommended additions really included the combination of the employees that would have been funded in both 221 and 222 if COVID-19 hadn't occurred. We are proactively addressing deferrals and this upcoming year's needs. And we need to do so before it snowballs into another year of deferrals and negative impacts on our residents. We cannot kick the can down the road for another year. For a side-by-side comparison, let's discuss additional investments in Team Fargo proposed in the 2022 within the general fund. A total of 18 new employees compared to 2.25 in 2021. Maintaining our 86% employer share in the single plan for health insurance in 2022. Increasing the employer share of the family health insurance plan from 72% to 80% to remain competitive in the labor market. In contrast to the 2020 budget, which included no competitive wage adjustment, I am still recommending a 3% increase for our employees. Now, initially, we were looking for a 3.5 or a 4.0 increase in competitive wage, but the reality we found is in the health insurance, that premium was going up at a high rate. So in order to decrease the burden on the employees, we increased the ability for us to fund their health insurance, which is a benefit, and that's a cost to the city as well. So what we try to do is match the COLA with the health insurance issues that are going on. And you may not remember, but 2 years ago, the health insurance went up by 20%. So that's a considerable amount on the employee if they're hit with that type of increase, in which their wage would be going actually down and they wouldn't be keeping with competitive market. We also did a general fund personal reclassifications of $94,000. Now, I was asked by one of the commissioners about this. About 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we made a significant change in market in our police and fire. We found we were not at the levels we had to be. So in 20 and 21, we have been paying those increased wages. At the same time, our HR department looks at market, and your general fund personal reclassifications is oftentimes market competitive. That's what you're doing with that particular aspect. But in 22, we will look at another market survey of all our employees. Because of COVID, we weren't quite sure what happened. And then we look at all our employees. But every one of the directors is asked, if you think we're out of market, please tell us. And Ben Dow probably has the most steps to my office to try to advocate for some of his employees, but we try to respond to that best we can. When we are considering recommendations for competitive wage adjustment, I felt it was important to consider our peer governmental institutions and how they propose to modify their compensation levels, their mill levies, and the number of new employees they intend to add in 2022. In the first column, the one denoted in blue, you can see the summation of the recommendations contained within the 2022 preliminary budget, which I presented to you for Fargo. In the next column, you see a comparison of CAS-CLAVE plan as shown. You will notice that the county employees are on track to receive a 5.1% pay increase. No mill levy increase is proposed, and the county intends to add 15 more employees. Instead of doing a market study, what they decided to do is to try to bring their wage up by the 5.1 COLA. However, they are still behind the market on the average pay they are paying to the employees. For Fargo Parts, a combined 4% adjustment is being proposed along with 7 new employees. No change in the park's operating general fund levies is being proposed. For the city of West Fargo, a proposed increase of 3.4 mills will help fund a 1% wage increase for its employees and an additional 6 personnel. And there's something important to keep in mind. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, for our Midwest region is averaging about 5.8% increase over the last 12 months. The CPI takes into account the cross-section of jobs, just like we have at the city, ranging from professional to managerial to technical workers. When considering all that, I think I've reached a strong middle ground to retain, attract personnel while being fiscally prudent for the taxpayers and the economy. In this slide, you'll see the increases proposed of each one of the department's operating expenses. Nearly $1.25 million in additions are being recommended for funding. We're continuing to actively monitor and make modifications to reflect actual spent costs to our budget numbers, which allowed us to reduce budgets in administration, auditors, assessors, and incarceration department in this preliminary budget. We are improving budgetary transparency for our SWAT budget costs by removing these from the general fund and placing them in a special revenue fund to eliminate commingling of funds for this effort. The net operating expense increases for this section in the budget amounts to about $1.1 million. Now we move to the capital expenditures in this budget. In the city of Fargo, we have 5 separate non-enterprise capital funds, 3 separate event venue capital funds, and 9 separate enterprise capital funds. These classifications are based on the sources of revenue, particularly with respect to the enterprise utilities and the venues. On the roll-up slide, you'll see 3 various categories of capital funds and recommended outlays within each individual fund. A few years ago, we started asking department heads to provide a 5-year capital outlay schedule in an effort to get a better handle on the building needs and requests citywide. This helps the budget team see the big picture so I can recommend an efficient and timely capital budget. To actually receive funding, you need to submit a follow-up application to be reviewed and approved before it is funded. Ultimately, those that would be subsequently approved for funding would be financed through a bond sale or loan with an annual debt service requirement. Revenue for the debt service fund is proposed to be initiated through a transfer from the Metro Cities ARP allocation in 2022. This will allow us to establish a fund balance in 402 to satisfy debt service obligations going forward. The fund balance could also be supplemented by proceeds from the sale of city-owned property. If the proceeds for the Metro Cities ARP transfer or city-owned land sales were placed in the debt service capital fund, it may be a way to address some of the annual debt service requirements. You can see that this total project listed is about $6.5 million. This budget includes a $2 million Metro City ARP appropriation to seed the beginning of the money needed to fund those items. As we have discussed previously, the City of Fargo received nearly $22 million in funding allocations via the Metro Cities and HUD portions of the American Rescue Plan Act. On this slide, you will see our recommendations to utilize about $13 million of those funds on important and impactful projects, which will be positively benefit the Fargo residents for decades to come. This includes capital to fund the Core Neighborhoods Plan implementation, site cleanup costs for Mid-America Steel property, replacing the city's core accounting and financial system, an engagement center with corresponding services for our homeless residents, a new Southside fueling station to improve efficiencies and response times to residents in the growing south area of Fargo, sheltering activities, and an ultrafiltration membrane build-out of a water treatment plant. The city also received public safety CARES allocation, and the budget includes spending about $1.1 million on the Fargo Police Department reorganization plan, as previously presented by the chief, facility repairs on the current interim downtown engagement center building, and upgrades to the technology at the emergency operations centers. The cost associated with each of these projects is on the slide. Now on the slide is a full roll-up of the general fund expense projections. The general fund is a summation of costs associated with executing on our daily bread and butter activities to provide the citizens of Fargo the services they need and deserve. This is a primary fund in which the property taxes go towards, which is precisely why the budget team is laser focused on maximizing resident impact on this piece of budget. These numbers reflect a thoughtful reflection of the overall budget themes and objectives discussed at the beginning of this presentation. Our recommended 2022 general fund budget is about $104 million. Of the total proposed increase of the $6.7 million, nearly $5.8 million is all attributed to personnel, either in new employees or existing employees' salaries and benefits. That's 86% of the proposed increase. And again, it takes people to serve people. So now that we've discussed all the expenses associated with our services, we'll show you our recommendations to pay for them in the revenue section of this budget presentation. The table on the screen shows revenues, showcase revenues as estimated at $104.5 million. This indicates a fully funded and balanced budget to meet our needs. It includes an increased tax revenue from building and construction activity, organic growth in the real estate property values, which is a positive sign for any urban community with growth aspirations, increasing revenues from the state of North Dakota brought about by improving economy, and revenue replacement funding for the Metro City American Recovery Plan. You will also see a notable increase in the miscellaneous category. This includes the portion of proceeds from the sale of the Island Park ramp. For utility fee increases, we are only recommending one increase for the upcoming year. We are recommending increases to account for the cost of stormwater section of the organization. This change would result in a $1 per month increase in resident rates and a $3 per month increase with variables in the non-resident rate. On this slide, you will see a historic trend of the growth of taxable value within the city annually since 1980. The graph indicates how quickly we're experiencing new development complying with inflationary growth. The average growth from year to year is approximately 5.7%. The increases in taxable values are an important indicator of a resilient and economically healthy city. You will notice 3 consecutive years, 2015, 16, and 17, with exceptional growth occurred. So, how did we respond to that? Well, the City Commission took action in each of these years to reduce the city's mill levy in response to this period of rapid growth. The city has the ability to levy 64 mills to fund the government operations, and we are currently utilizing 53 of those. I'm not proposing any increase in city mills in 2022 for Fargo residents. The City Commission has had a stable city mill levy history in the past several years, as shown on this chart. This chart shows the roll-up of the most recent taxable value increases. It is divided between new development growth and market trending inflation. This was a question raised by Commissioner Strand when I first presented this preliminary budget, and I wanted to provide an answer to the full commission. When accounting for sunsetting tax increment finance projects, we see the city will experience a cumulative 2.89% increase in taxable value on new developments, compared to a 2.93% increase based on inflation. In total, Fargo's taxable value will increase 5.82% this year. In other words, roughly half the growth of our tax base is due to new developments, and the other half is due to natural inflation. Now, on this slide is a breakdown of Fargo's taxable valuation divided into agricultural, commercial, and residential classifications. A strong commercial base accounts for more than half of the cumulative taxable valuation, which in turn helps to reduce the tax share of residential property owners. In previous presentations, you may recall this split was closer to 52-48. This updated split indicates tangible commercial growth, which decreases our residential tax burden. On this slide, you can see a roll-up of the budgetary process calendar. Tomorrow, August 10th, is the legal deadline for us to prepare and submit a preliminary budget the upcoming year. As a reminder, tonight's action sets the ceiling for the maximum of the total budget. That is, modifications still can be made after approving the 2022 preliminary budget, but the total general fund budget cannot be raised. Over the last several days, you have offered some feedback to the budget team and corresponding department heads on the 2022 preliminary budget. Thank you for your candor and your thoughtful considerations. I would like to review the highlights of the comments received so far. Commissioner Garrick asked that we consider a reduction of 1 to 2 mills in the general fund. Implementation of a conceptual tiered competitive wage adjustment where those earning lower wages would receive a higher increase, while those at higher tiers in our pay system would receive a lower or no increase. Deputy Mayor Pipcorn sought to utilize the revenue from the sale of the Island Park ramp for future capital expenditures in the parking fund. Commissioner Preston requested funding for a housing program as well as a housing specialist position. Commissioner Strand asked to dedicate a 1/2 mil increase for public arts, earmark funding for future transit obligations, a public art bus wrap program, and a training and economic relief via the United Way. So let's go through the analysis that I've undertaken first on Commissioner Garrick's suggestions. 1 or 2 mil reduction. I thoroughly examined costs and revenues in the preliminary 2022 budget, cognitive of the need to fund deferred personnel additions from the COVID-impacted 2021 budget, as well as remaining dedicated to the goal of creating a sustainable and predictable tax base to fund operations in subsequent years when supplemental funding is not available. Recognizing that 78% of the current fund balance is personnel related, I chose not to support a mill levy reduction at this time. Conceptual tiered competitive wage adjustment. Modeling indicates it would be condensed pay and would quickly lead to subordinates earning more than their supervisors. This would effectively degrade the integrity of our current pay plan. With 28% of the workforce at maximum of their pay grade, their only opportunity for an increase is through a COLA. If they fall into a tier that doesn't allow for an increase, their compensation would level off, or they would lose pay with the cost of benefit premium increases. This approach would have a negative impact on our ability to remain competitive within the market. Commissioner Garrick, I don't know if you I don't know you didn't, I do know that you didn't specifically bring up the Fargo Fire Department in recent conversations following the release of the 2022 budget, but I think it's important to know that substantially funds priorities that you have discussed in the past in the liaison department. That budget includes funding for the design of Fire Station Number 8 in reflection to the growth of South Fargo and response time goals to continue securing highest accreditation. The 2022 preliminary budget would also create command leadership for future growth of Fargo Fire with the addition of Assistant Fire Marshal and Fire Training Captain. In 2023, we may have to fund the staff to fill Fire Station Number 8, which would include possibly 8 to 12 more firemen, which would add an increased cost to our budget as well. Deputy Mayor Pipcorn, you discussed the desire to see revenue from the sale of the Island Park ramp utilized to fund future capital expenditures from the parking fund. I can assure you that 50% of these proceeds were proposed will be deposited in the parking fund to provide resources for future parking projects. The remaining 50% of the revenue generated by the sale of the ramp is proposed to be utilized as miscellaneous revenue to fund the 2022 general fund budget. Commissioner Preston, you had requested funding for a housing program as well as a housing specialist position. In the discussion with the Department of Planning Department, it was determined that our mid-year assessment on these two requests would be most effective and appropriate, given that the other additional work plan priorities are being created through 2022 budget for the department staff. Just as a review, we are already asking Planning and Development to implement the following new initiatives which are funded in this 2022 budget. $1 million for the Core Neighborhoods Plan, $900,000 for sheltering, $400,000 for Engagement Center, and $400,000 for Legatus Ray Shelter. Commissioner Strand, you had noticed several requests and I'd like to respond to each one. A dedicated $1.5 million increase for public art. Historically, Fargo has intentionally refrained from carving out earmarks for certain projects to allow for evolving condition and requirements in its budgets. However, a one-time funding could be available within the Nonprofit Social Fund Services ARP Fund to allow for this $315,000 demonstration for public art initiatives. As we go forward, if this does work, we would consider it in future budgets. Funding future transit obligations. Due to the evolving COVID federal funding priorities, there are several potentials for future grant funds coming into Fargo, which may require a local match. Since there is such uncertainty, it is not advisable to devote specific resources to certain programs until we have more clarity. However, the anticipated local match requirements have been included in the 2022 budget for knowing upcoming 2022 projects. Public art bus route program funding. Funding could be available for the Nonprofit Social Services ARP Fund to allow for this project in 2022. And I think you have 4, 8, 10 buses. We're not sure how many buses, John, but we would like to see that come forward. Training and economic relief via funding of the United Way. Funding could be available within the Nonprofit Social Services ARP Fund to develop work with the United Way and its partners on English education training and a relief plan for businesses and nonprofits. The Community Development Committee would assist in standing up these programs, all of which would need to receive City Commission approval. So, sorry for a long discussion, but I think you need to know my 2022 budget. On the screen is a suggested motion to move the 2022 preliminary budget to the next stage. I would now like the Commission to discuss this important topic. Comments or questions?
Mr. Chair, this may be a little bit bizarre or different, but I think we need to be concerned about the 3%. I think that's great, but I think we're looking backwards. Right now, the job market I believe if we don't do something more than that, we're going to start losing city employees to private business. I just think we're in a whole different world right now. You just have to drive around town and look at all the job openings. So I support, the 3%, and I do know there's more to the story with the health benefits. I do think that's a great thing, but if nothing else, I'd like to have a commitment that we, in the middle of next year or something, look at another wage adjustment, because I think it's changing so quickly right now, and everyone knows the starting wage right now for a lot of jobs is $15 to $20 for a starting job. And so I guess that might seem a little bit ironic, but I do think it's something that we need to look at. Thank you.
Would it be okay if we look at that mid-budget next year?
Absolutely. I guess that's what I'm looking for. But I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, but I think it's a serious issue. And obviously it's great for our economy and great for hourly wages. But I think I think all the department heads, we've been hearing from them, especially some of our starting jobs, we're having difficulty attracting people. So I think it's something we need to keep an eye on. So thank you.
Mr. Preston?
Yeah, that was the only concern really that I had, was in regards to the wage adjustments. The market survey that you talked about, is that something that gets done internally? I didn't see anything in the budget about that. I'm assuming it would require a consultant to do that. Are we planning to do that like this fall?
I think Mike has that. Mike Renninger? And the question on the 5.1, a market survey, if we do a market survey, would require a market survey of the whole employees. And that's a rather big project. That would be something we'd consider in 2022 if we want to.
Oh, so
but
we wouldn't do the market survey before 2022?
I'll let Mike
Yeah,
talk.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'll introduce Beth Wigman from our staff as well. We have talked about doing a market study to start in '22. They would have recommendations later in '23. I'll let Beth describe that in greater detail. It has been some time since we've done some market work. We've deferred and delayed some of that. Go ahead, Beth.
Yes, like Mike said, the hope would be to be able to do a market study that would really review all of the wages that we have throughout the city. There is not a current schedule in place to do that. We would likely look at contracting and bringing in consultants to help us with that project.
Mr. Chairman, if I could do a follow-up.
Mr. Preston?
So how long would it take you to do a market survey, bringing a consultant in, the whole thing?
I don't have that information. Without having talked to any consultants or anything, we would have to get that information for you.
It seems like if we're going to consider a mid-year adjustment, it would be important to get that done early on in 2022.
Sure.
And again, I didn't see anything in your budget that would allow for that.
Right. Yeah, and like Mike said, we have not planned for that in this budget. It's something that we have discussed going forward, but not budgeted for this year. So if that was something that needed to happen, we'd have to look at that.
I would strongly encourage it. I think we're going to be falling
Agreed.
behind, actually.
Agreed.
Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Initially, one heck of a job on this budget from you and the entire administrative team. After the year we've been through, to see some light at the end of the tunnel while we're still moving through the pandemic. Good work. I'm going to concur with Commissioner Pepcorn's concern about our employees and the compensation and wage packages. One of the cautions I have is after the '09 flood, I think, I wasn't here, but we heard a lot from our workers that we got into a pattern of not addressing their wages and compensation until mid-year. So we would set a budget and then see how things looked and then revisit our wages and our compensation. And they felt like second-class citizens sometimes. They didn't feel like it was a high enough priority to be put in the front end of a budget. So my caution is let's not do that again. Let's be open to addressing the needs as the realities surface in the economy. But maybe a suggestion, and this is, there's a question implied here. This is our preliminary budget. And you're turning the preliminary budget in tomorrow. By October 9th or 10th or whatever, you turn in you certify the budget with the county. Let's say, for example, the appetite existed to throw a 0.5% or 1% at our employee workforce. Could we pencil that out now and see what it could look like? and see how much that would be and then maybe preliminarily, kind of like with transit, earmark?
Kent, what would be the change for if we go up 0.5? I'm believing it's $500,000.
It's a lot.
I believe.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question while Kent's coming up? We could make a motion to approve this, but we could also make a motion to do this market study. And to me, that's the possibility but anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting,
That's
but
fine.
Ken?
Yeah, well, Commissioner, with regard to the cost of let's just start with easy math, 1% COLA would be about $630,000. The present budget has a surplus of $282,000 within that. So I mean, half of 630, 315, somewhere in that range.
I think we could accept a 3.5 COLA if that's what the group wanted to do. It always could come down if you guys over the next 4 weeks decide to go down. They won't have a market survey done in 4 weeks. They just can't, it just takes much longer to do that. But I think we could make the 3.5 work. If you want to accept the preliminary with the 3.5, we can then pencil it out. It'll come out in the final reports. Commissioner Strand.
Let me ask you this, how close were you to advancing that proposal anyway?
We were close to that, John. It was just the health insurance that had gone up, but this also will stabilize many of the employees that are borderline on that. They get an advantage to that, but their previous employee, we paid 70% and they paid 30%. They're going down to 20%. So that 10% always doesn't make a huge difference in our lower wage. So you probably would be helping people with lower wage better. And Commissioner Peckborn, if you wanted to do that, advance that 3.5, I have no objection to that.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I guess that would be, I'd make that motion. But then I'd also like to include the market survey in, basically that would take place now, but then that would be for the next year's budget. Does that make sense? And I took, the thing that, what you talked about, John, is very true. And then last year during COVID, we did not do a COLA because we didn't know what was going to happen. And so then the end of the year turned out better. So this has been an issue in the past. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you.
Commissioner Gary.
I appreciate that you snuck in a sustainable and predictable into the presentation. And that's a good thing. And I also appreciate, like you said, the Station 2 money that we're looking for and the Station 8 money, which is very important for South Fargo, which is where you live. It needs to be in there, and we need to start putting the money now. Now, as far as the 3% or the 3% COLA, the reason I want to tier this is because if you have an employee who makes $100,000 a year and they get a 3%, they're getting a $3,000 increase. If you have an employee who makes $50,000 a year, that same 3% is $1,500. So while your argument is if we tier it, it shrinks the gap between them. Well, if we don't tier it, it increases that gap between them. So the people who make more money are getting a greater increase from that 3%, but they're paying the same amount in healthcare, for example, as the lower tiered people. As long as you have a family rate, it doesn't matter if you make $10 an hour or $100 an hour, you pay the same amount for healthcare. It's not based on how much you make. So while we're concerned about the healthcare costs, we're looking at a 3% across the board, which is affecting the people who make less, and it's affecting people who make more. So if we want to keep those people who are making lower wages, we have to focus on them. Giving a 3% or 3.5 across the board does not focus on them. It just throws more money at Bruce Grubb, for example, the top employee. Bruce isn't going anywhere. Bruce and those guys are going to stay for a while because they're making really good money. It's the people making $15, $20 an hour who could go somewhere else and make a little bit more that we should be concerned with. So that 3% across the board is not a useful use of those tax dollars. In fact, it's a waste of those tax dollars. The mills have stayed steady, and I appreciate that. When I came in, they started going down, and I believe they should go down more. But at the same time, over the last decade or so, maybe 12 years, the values have doubled in the city of Fargo. A house that was $100,000 in 2007 when I bought 2009 when I bought my first home is now worth $250,000. So while the valuations are skyrocketing, we're keeping the mills the same, which gives us more and more money in our pocket, and we're not giving that dividend back to the people. We're just pocketing that money and spending it. So by saying that the mills are staying steady and therefore you should be happy for us or with us, that's completely absurd. If your house doubled in value over the last 10 years, you're doubling your property taxes. That's how much you're paying. You're paying literally double. So we need to show the investment. If we tell people that that you're spending less because there's more businesses. Well, my meals have stayed the same, so I'm paying more because my valuation went up. We need to recognize that. So yes, obviously there's good things in here. Focusing on the future of the fire station, which is my department, obviously important, and we're going to need more employees and those type of things sooner rather than later. Being sustainable and predictable, that's a good thing. But we need to, when we say things like invest, we need to give people back the dividends from those investments, and that's what we're not doing in this budget.
Just want to respond a little bit to a pay plan. So in a pay plan, people can go up grades and steps. When somebody is exempt, they no longer get grades and steps. So the worker that's at $50,000 will have continue as he stays with us. I think Grubb has been with us over 25 years. So what happens to him, he's fixed. So unless you do a COLA, he has no change in his salary, whereas everybody else continues to move in their salary. So the important about an integrated salary structure is we try to set up a set of fairness, and steps are a considerable percentage that goes up. It goes higher than a COLA. So the reality is that people who follow that have somewhat predictability about what's going to happen to their salary, what happens every year. Why would you take one of the most important people in your organization and not reward him for his good work? It's not that he's not going to go anywhere. He likes being here, but he's just like every other employee for the city of Fargo. They like the way the system works, and you have to have a system that is consistent. So when we do a market survey, what we'll find, like we found in police and fire, we had to add a couple more steps because we're losing people 10 years because they did not go up. And we lost competitive edge over West Fargo and Moorhead. So the integrated pay plan that was worked on in 2008, 2009 is something that's integrated throughout our system. So everybody knows, I follow this system, here's what my pay will be, and eventually I'll get a pension. It's no different than you in the Guard. You have a consistent type of system that you understand. And nowhere have I found any HR person recommend any type of grade scale or whatever. We all get the same. And I can tell you, my wife's in healthcare, and she just noticed that people in the hospital got 3% and people outside the hospital got 2%. Not going to work. People do not like that type of treatment. They like to be all treated fairly. So I understand your concerns on that, but I would be strongly for that. Commissioner Pepcorn, when you made your motion, was it with the 3.5?
It was 3.5. And can I just add one thing real quick?
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a motion on the table. We need to second it.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to that,
Yeah.
Commissioner
Can I just
Preston.
add real quick?
So I just wanted to know
Let's
what
get a
his
second.
motion was, and then, are you going to second it?
So my motion is at the 3.5, but then also this review, so then that will be for the future. I just want to add, so just so Bruce doesn't feel like we're picking on him, I'm just telling you, he might be the most valuable person in this whole room. And if I was a headhunter for a lot of other big cities, he would be at the top of my list. Because if you want to go down the list of things that Bruce Grubb's done for us, Fargo Dome in 2009, sandbagging, we put the sandbags in Fargo Dome. That saved our rear ends. True? You know what? I'm not even going to start because Bruce will be asking for a raise by the time. But anyway, there's a long list of things that he's done. Everybody here is aware of that. But the other thing is, there's a whole tables full of people. They're well paid because they're very valuable, and we don't want to lose any of them. Some of them will lose to retirement, but I'm just telling you, we could lose them to some big cities and they could make a lot more money and probably deal with a lot friendlier commissioners than us. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Preston.
Yeah, I just want to add to this a little bit in that, yes, some of those individuals that are at the top of the pay scale, their work is real evident to us because they're in front of us all the time. But you also have to recognize there are employees who are working day after day after day. And I'm thinking specifically, I just had a phone call not too long ago, just a day ago, about the library employees and how well they do with individuals that may not have permanent residency in this city, and how kind and how kind they are to those individuals and the service they provide. So let's not forget about those individuals that are at the lower end of the scale, the pay scale. I guess the suggestion I would make is when we do this market survey, if we can get a sense of what that gap is from the lower end to the high end, so that we get a sense of, is that gap growing over the years and should that be addressed? I truly believe that we don't want, You know, you hear about CEOs that are getting 200 times what the lower waged employees are getting. We don't want to get to that point. And I'm not saying we're at 200 times, but we need to know what that number is, probably.
Commissioner Strand first, then Commissioner Gehrig.
Thank you. Commissioner Gehrig, this question you've raised gives us an opportunity to talk about our values and our principles. And it reminds me of the school district years ago when across on the other side of the state, there's a big school district that didn't encourage longevity the way the Fargo school district did. And the same argument was there. Well, let's give the new people a lot more and kind of put a ceiling on those who've been here. Then that raises a question, well, what's the career path potential of somebody who's going to an entity that doesn't want them forever, or wants to cut them off at the top, or wants to penalize them for success for getting there and staying there? So I think these values are worth weighing, and there's pros and cons to both ends of this. My personal bent is to support the career paths of the best people we can as long as we can keep them. It's called retention. And so it's a great discussion. It's a really important discussion. I just can't imagine us putting the message out to our senior staff, well, your days are numbered. You've not only reached your peak in steps and lanes, but you've reached your peak as far as your support in the commission. And I don't think that's the right message to put out. I want people to make this their lifelong career that we invest in. They invest in us. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. And I think it's a small price to pay.
Commissioner Gehrig.
In the military, you top out. If you don't move your grade, that's how much you make. That's just it. So when you talk about my job in the military, you do get topped out. What you're going to find with this market survey is that the turnover is happening at the bottom. It's not happening at the top. So it's not about not appreciating or appreciating the people at the top. I'm just telling you dollars and cents, truth to power, that they're not leaving. They're staying because they like this job. And they're getting paid really good salaries in order to be here. So it's not about not appreciating them. I think that's a red herring. Thirdly, they have a contract. They've been working here for 20 plus years, whatever it is. They knew what the step and grade process was. So to then complain about it once you reach the top of that or once you max out, change careers then. Go somewhere else within the city. There's 1,000 jobs literally in the city you could do. So you can change career paths. But once you reach the top of that point, don't look back at us and complain. You knew where you were going. You have a contract. Arlette, the disparity is growing. We've been giving COLAs for the last 7 years since I've been here across the board. And it equals out to now, I think, 15 or 20% that we've raised it in those last 7 years. So it's 15 or 20% of a more disparity between each person. There has been no focus on here or there. Whether you think it should be the top or I actually think it should be the bottom or the middle or whatever, it's been across the board. So just mathematically, yes, that disparity has been growing. People at the bottom are making far less than people up top. And that's why you see the turnover at the bottom, because we're not focusing on that.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Gary?
No.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Recommendation for appointment inspection director and building official. I believe we have him here tonight, and Bruce Grubb will do the introduction.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. As you're aware, we acknowledged him tonight. Bruce Turleson, our inspections director, is retiring in early September. We wish him well. We really enjoyed what he did while he was here, but in advance of Bruce's retirement, a search was conducted for the next inspections director, and that search has been completed. And so as a result of the search, in front of you tonight is a recommendation to appoint Shauna Radnick, standing to my left, as to the position of inspections director, building official. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the search process. It involved a national advertisement, a review of applications that were received, and 2 rounds of interviews. A committee was formed to assist in that effort, and that committee was made up of 6 members. The liaison commissioner, Commissioner Pepcorn, Brenda Derrig, the city engineer, Nicole Crutchfield, our director of planning and development, Terry Hogan, our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Mike Redlinger, the Assistant City Administrator, and myself. And so we did receive a total of 13 applications, of which 6 were given initial interviews. Those interviews were conducted on the 21st and 22nd of July and did include a mock situational dangerous building case, not unlike what you saw tonight. Then the committee selected or individually scored each of the interviews. We ended up selecting 2 to advance to a second round of interviews, and those were done on July 27th. So similarly, the selection committee members quantified, individually scored the second round of interviews as well. And so based on the quantified scoring, the selection committee has forwarded the recommendation for the appointment of Shauna Radnick as the next Fargo Inspections Director, building official, and asked if Sean could be here tonight to be able to introduce him to the commission and the public as well. And he is here and would be happy to address the commission if you have some questions. Commissioner Pepcorn serving on that committee, maybe you have something you'd like to add in this regard, but we really had a bunch of good applicants, we felt, and it was a difficult selection process, but happy with what we've done.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
Mr. Chair, I just, ditto to whatever he said. It was really good. There were 6 finalists. All 6 were very good candidates, and so I was very good. Commissioner Preston was concerned about having your bio and your application. If you could maybe forward that to us just for the past information, that'd be good, I think. And,
yes, Commissioner Preston did reach out by email yesterday and said, hey, look, it would be really nice to see a resume come forward anytime there's an appointment being asked of by the commission. Really a good thought, and distributed that earlier today, and we'll make that a habit in the future. So thank you.
So I
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion, and I apologize for that. We should have done that. That was just something that slipped up. But the other thing I want to add is, so Jill Minette from Human Resources, when you do a job, most of us have participated, it's always done very professionally. And so it's just, I really enjoy, it's such a calm influence because she knows her stuff so well, and the search is done so well. So I think that speaks a lot for her. So thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Welcome aboard. Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yeah.
Mahoney?
Yes. I guess I should have waited to the vote before I said that. Welcome aboard. Thank you. You have my recommendation for Native American Commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Who was the second?
I'll be a
John?
second.
Okay. I'll take John first, or let's second,
Dave
or
and I
Dr.
just-
Commissioner Preston second. Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Review the City Commission Code of Conduct. Commissioner Strand to address.
Thank you, Mayor. And you know, tonight's meeting is also a reminder of why I think this topic should come forward to us. The way we present ourselves publicly is so critically important. I don't want to see us calling each other by first names. You know, we're not that comfortable, you know, it's Mayor Mahoney. It's Commissioner Pepcorn, you know, and let's just remind ourselves of some of these basics, you know, and so that topic has been evolving for a while. We've been getting very casual. And you know, we're all elected officials, and you can't tell an elected official how to think and how to act, and you don't have any influence on them. Our last meeting had some moments that kind of got some public attention, but our last several meetings have had some moments. I think it's just important for us to remind ourselves of our decorum, our expectations of public performance and behavior, and just to reset that so we aim back for the high road. I'm not here to beat anybody up. Trust me, I've made more stupid decisions and actions in my life and I have fingers and toes to count. So that's my major point, is just to remind us to reset. If we hit a wall and stuff unfolds, maybe what we do then is take a little recess, come back to our meeting and regroup. That's it. We have our moments, but we kind of fell off the rails, ran off the rails recently, and it's good just to always respect each other, always honor each other, always show other people that despite our differences, we can still work together.
Any discussion? Commissioner
Mr. Chairman.
Preston.
Yeah, I had a lay-down item put on the table here. It's basically an ordinance from Grand Forks that Eric was kind enough to get for me. And there's a bit more specificity in basically the rules that they follow. I would suggest that we look at that and consider probably incorporating some of this into our rules of conduct. I would also encourage, and I know it's difficult when you're chairing a meeting that can get heated like it did 2 weeks ago, but I would encourage you, Mr. Chairman, use that gavel. If we're getting out of line, use it. And I would also encourage, if it's getting too heated, that we go into recess, or another possibility is adjourning until the next day, letting things calm down. So just to encourage you to use your chair position to do some of that, I would like to see that.
And I thank you for that, but I think we all have to relook at our activities and how we respond. And we've been told to be respectful of each other, and I would hope we go forward. I think we had a pretty good meeting tonight. We're respectful of each other's, and I think Commissioner Strand, we have been trying to make sure we call them by Commissioner Strand, Commissioner Gary, those types of things. And we'll take a suggestion that if things get out of hand, we will call a recess in the future so we can calm people down. Any other discussion? Item number 1, the findings and conclusions of the order of the City Board of the City Commissioners of the City of Fargo regarding this license suspension of the International African Restaurant and Nightclub. I think Nancy Morris is to address this. This was on the consent agenda, and we had a hearing. I believe it's just the findings of fact of what we found at that meeting.
That's correct. So what is pending right now, I do believe the application has been completed, and I think the police chief is in a position to respond to that request.
And the delay is just taking to do, Nancy? Morris? Isn't the delay in getting the character references, or is there a holdup with the FBI, or what is the issue?
Again, I would defer to Chief Sobolski on the status of that reapplication and background checks that are ongoing.
Good, he's just behind you.
Snuck up on you. Good evening, Commissioners. We're continuing to work on the background. There's a number of pieces of information we're waiting for in response to that. So as soon as we can get those responses, in order for us to have all the complete information to provide to you, we hope to have that accomplished by the end of this week, but we are waiting for other entities to respond.
Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Garrick?
Are we expecting a special meeting when that happens, or are we going to wait till the next regular?
I think they've requested a special meeting, so if we had the data, I would presume as commissioners, we'd come together. I probably would give you a 24-hour notice if I could.
So, Mr. Chair,
Pepcorn.
correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes to liquor control first, and we are also going to have an emergency meeting whenever it gets done. So as soon as it gets done, and then we'll pass it on to the City Commission, if I believe that's correct. Yep.
Nancy Morris, can we confirm that? Commissioner Pepcorn thinks it would be a liquor control meeting prior to the City Commission meeting.
That's correct. That was the motion, to present it for approval to Liquor Control Board and to City Commission following that approval.
Very good. Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And we had this on our consent agenda, but I think it was important for us to all get an update where things are at prior to the action by the Liquor Control Board of the city. So as I hear it, there's information to be completed so the background checks can be done, and then it goes to Liquor Control Board, and then that recommendation comes to the city. So we're all on the same page.
Commissioner Preston.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just have a quick question for Nancy. What is the role of the findings of fact? What does this accomplish?
It just confirms the findings that you in fact found cause to suspend the license and set up the parameters for when that suspension would potentially cease.
So is it a consideration for the question that's going to come before us, which is the reissuance or the approval of reopening, re-allowing, or I don't know how to state it here, allowing them to open up again?
No, at this time,
It
the
isn't.
reapplication is pending, and so that will come to you pending the recommendation of the Liquor Control Board. This is new ground in terms of what was ordered during the term of suspension. So it is something that has been, I'm just confirming what this commission determined would be the appropriate response to the violation brought forward.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote?
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. I just want to take time to thank all the department heads and the budget team for working on this budget that you guys saw tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's hard work, hard effort that brings it forth to you at this time. I also want to commend the communications team for making it understandable, I think for the public and for the commissioners as well. And so I'd just like to give a round of applause to all our people who are our people who work here. Move to adjourn?
So move.
Second? We're adjourned.